start the water ceremony. Now, the water ceremony or celebration is something that we do here every September, and not just here, but in all the Unitarian Universalist churches in the world. The tradition started in Unitarian Universalist churches in the mid-1980s. It's a ritual that members bring to Sunday worship a small amount of water that you had from somewhere in your summer travels, or from a special place like your backyard in a rain puddle, or from your spigot, that you bring some water here and put it together with our common water. We also have some communal water here in these pitchers that you can use just in case you forgot your own water. As the water is added, each person explains where the water came from and how it is special to them. The combined water is symbolic of the shared Unitarian Universalist faith coming from many sources, and it also represents our seventh principle, which states, "We affirm and promote the respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are just one part." We, like the rest of all the interdependent web, need water to survive. Every person on the planet, every plant on the planet, every animal on the planet, we are connected by this commonality of water. But we don't want too much water, right? Remember Harvey? We've had some hurricanes here, that's for sure. Harvey, Rita, Ike, Alicia. You're coming in right at the hurricane time. Allison, Maria, just to name a few hurricanes. And for Jeff and I, we also had Hurricane Dorian. We were on a cruise ship when the hurricane started whipping up, and the captain sent out a message to everyone saying, "Don't worry, I got this." And he did. He changed course, and we really were not impacted. So this year, when we put our water together, may we be thankful for the water that keeps us alive, and thankful for the lack of hurricanes in Houston this year. Plus, remember to hold in our hearts all those people in the Bahamas right now that are working to rebuild their lives. May we respect water, cherish it, and enjoy it, as well as conserve it. So now I'm going to invite you up one row at a time with your water and to mix it in with a communal bowl. If you don't have water, just use the extra that's up here. And please tell us briefly about your water, not 10 minutes about your water. Just briefly share how it's special to you. Okay, so Michael, you want to start us out? Yeah.
Well, I can tell you this. This can be water from Chocolate Bayou. It's that plastic is sitting on Chocolate Bayou watching the sunset. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen.
Okay, thank you. Laura? Sharon? Next row.
Just traveled in the car with me. We went down to Clear Lake. I watched my son get my youngest child be married on June 20th.
I need to use the communal water because what I want to say about water sort of is what Patty already said. But I think we need to keep in mind that we just value our own water and think of the children in Flint, Michigan and in New Jersey who are dealing with water that does not sustainable.
Come on up. Sorry, I might have thrown you off there.
Well, I could make my own water, but that would be inappropriate. So this symbolizes the water of life, which we've experienced a cycle of life with and memory of my father.
Thank you.
Well, I like Patty's comment about no longer
My experience too much, but yet water is very precious, and we should do what we can to. So we should definitely do what we can to make sure that we have clean water.
I'm going to pour a tiny drop in here because I still remember the 50 inches that was in my house after our last hurricane. So that's all you get.
It took me tripping over a curb and breaking my hip, but we got a beautiful new tub to shower conversion. And it looks a lot like this. And I'm walking again. I have to bring some water.
I love to swim in our neighborhood pool, so this water is from our pool. I learned how to swim at the YMCA when I was a kid, and unfortunately too many people do not know how to swim, and people drown every year. So I'm proposing universal swim lessons for everyone.
This is to represent water from our Caribbean cruise, and it was a birthday gift for Patty because she is a water baby.
This is for the Atlantic, the water where I visited at Martha's Vineyard with my dear friend, Linda.
Water from my home. I have to admit that I'm a little lonely, but I'm glad to have my own home.
My water is from Ruidoso, New Mexico, into the mountain gods, way up in the mountains with the lake over which I zip-lined.
This is water from my parents' farm. Probably I've been there for the last time because it's going to be sold and my mom's moving into senior housing, or independent apartment, but still. It's going to be weird to go see her and not be out in the country on a farm.
Doing double duty here. This first pour is still not sparkling from representing our visit to Florence. It was kind of a bucket list thing I've always wanted to do. And this is for the water involved in taming our garden and our yard, and I want to thank Ryan for helping us do that and getting me right with our neighbors.
That pour represents watering Mom's plants this morning before I left Belleville to come today. And again, I want to thank everyone who's been here, Gary and Kim, Jan, Patty, my support since Wayne's been gone, but also it made me think of a song that I came up with, and Wayne and I never finished it, but it was back when the water ran, and it had a conservation undertone to it, so maybe that song will get written one day, and Gary can help me and Kim can sing it. Thank y'all.
First. This is water from Destin, Florida. We had our first family reunion in the U.S. There this past Thanksgiving. So most of my family, you guys know, live in Colombia, and so we had some family from Miami, and they drove up. We drove that way, and that was about halfway. So we spent Thanksgiving in Destin, Florida.
as an addendum to that, because it was his first real family reunion, there was like 2 days in, and he goes, "They're all so weird." And I was like, "Hey, you're finally having that experience. Congratulations."
We all are.
This is a little water from Gus and I's anniversary trip to Maine, which was a water-filled anniversary. But we went on a wooden sailing ship together with another couple who was running it, and I thought the whole experience was a really nice kind of affirmation of our marriage.
So my pour is for, I'm just being thankful that I'm able to talk in front of you guys and be here at this church.
Mine is for new friends and family with you guys.
I'm Vicki Ferry. This pour is for the wonderful 1.5 years of marriage I've had to this man.
I wish I'd actually brought some water back because we just were on a wonderful baseball trip to multiple cities, and the last one was St. Louis. We stayed right on the Mississippi River by the Arch. That's a beautiful piece of water, and I would love to have had it to share, but this will have to memorialize that.
This water is symbolically from the Thames River in London, where it just came back to, for 2 weeks, and I saw my daughter and the 2 grandsons.
This water is from Galveston, where we took the kids to our last vacation before school started.
This pour is for our new home with additional bathrooms, which we needed for our family.
I used to sit with patients in the hospital, and there were times that they couldn't have water because of surgery, or they were afraid that the water was going to go into their lungs and they would get pneumonia. And it was torturous, watching them. Even though they were being hydrated through an IV, it wasn't the same. And so it made me appreciate the fact that I can drink water.
That's just a tiny bit of water because it represents Lake Minnetonka, where I grew up, and I went home for my mumble-something high school reunion this summer. But the lake was too big to bring back, so.
This water represents the Southwest. I recently went to New Mexico and Arizona, and water is critical for that region.
This water is a wish for the future, that there will be clean drinking water and a healthy environment for this world, because there's lots to do.
Well, this water represents life and energy. And what I'm thankful for is that Patty has all the energy to run up and down and do all that she's doing.
This water represents the 10 gallons of water that came in under our laminate floor from our air conditioner condensate and has kept us out of our condo for 10 weeks.
And this is not your typical water justice, but there was justice because we bought that condo a year ago and they didn't disclose all the problems with the pipes, which I hear that's illegal. But Dan had this premonition that the water heater was going to go out, so why not just go ahead and replace it? And you know, it was pretty old. It was about at the end of his life. And so I said, fine. Well, when the guy the plumber was taking it out, there was a little crack that we didn't know about, and it cracked open and flooded. And we would have been responsible for that floor. And turns out the people who sold it to us had to pay for all those repairs. Because if that water heater had opened up a week earlier, it would have been on us. So there is a little bit of water justice.
Julie, I think you're next. Yeah.
This water is serving two purposes. One is for the Puget Sound, where my daughter has been up in Seattle. She found a house. She's coming. She's closing October 16th. And the other one is for all the water justice that I'm hoping for in my own house. We're having the kitchen torn out, and I've been waterless for 2 weeks now. Got it back. Got a brand new, beautiful farmhouse sink. But I still have no washer and dryer, so I'm hoping by the end of next week that'll happen.
Well, this is from Katie Haberman. I talked to her on the phone last night. She called me from the Houston airport as she was on her way home from Mongolia back to Nebraska. She said, please put some water in for my travels to Mongolia, which I'm sure we'll hear about. And I want to echo Randy's concern about safe drinking water for everybody in the world.
To me, this water represents how it is substance for all living things on this planet, and without it, we wouldn't be breathing. Thank you.
This water represents a trip that I had in Galveston 5 years ago with the mother of my kids, and we had $20 in our pocket, and I had '98 Toyota Camry, and we had the best time over there. And we managed to do a lot of things. We ate ice cream, we had lunch. I managed to fix my car. We had a flat tire and fixed my car all in $20, and it was one of my best trips.
This water represents what is happening around the world. My country right now is in a very severe drought, and it's with the hope that they somehow get rain, and people will be safe, the crops will be safe.
JR, did you want to come up?
Well, this represents the water therapy that I'm doing. Is that had a pinched nerve earlier in the year, as well as fighting the little cancer thing. But the pinched nerve has probably been harder on me than the cancer was, because it kept me confined to the house. I couldn't walk anywhere without a cane, and all of a sudden I realized we have a pool in our community. So I've been going down to the pool a couple times a week and just doing water therapy, walking along, and I'm now able to walk without a cane and almost got rid of my limp. So I'm feeling very good about water therapy and how much it's been helping me. Pretty soon I'll be able to walk and nobody will know.
Yeah, if you went somewhere this summer and you want to share symbolic water from where you went, or it could be from your house or your backyard in a puddle or whatever.
I don't really go around water too much. Shower. Just a few weeks ago, we went to Galveston, and I think it was probably one of the best times. It was just us two. It was kind of spontaneous, no kids. We had a great time. That's about it.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Tobo. When I think about water, it takes me back home. I'm from the Dominican Republic. It's a very beautiful place, very calm and peaceful. And I just wanted to say that I'm here in search of a good message, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So my water symbolizes the Rio Cangrejal from Honduras. It is where we were able to lay my brother's ashes to rest, and so it just reminds me how we eventually go back to nature and become a part of it.
Thank you. Just want to say a blessing over the water. We bless this water. We are grateful for this water. We are grateful for all of us coming together here, and we are grateful for life. Blessed be, and amen. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit to the title of this sermon is Grace, Grace, Grace. And I have to tell you, us being able to have water is grace, grace, grace. If I asked each one of you individually, what does grace mean? I will tell you that we would probably get as many different definitions as there are people here. You think that's true? I have researched it, and I came across lots and lots and lots of definitions of grace. So I'm going to start with some common definitions and then share some of the other ones that really resonated with my heart. So the first time many of us heard the word grace probably was when we were little, and we had to say grace at the dinner table before we ate. Did anybody have to do that in your house? Absolutely. I did too, especially at Thanksgiving and Christmas. The kids would argue over who gets to say grace. So, we were taught that grace was a little prayer of thank you that you say before you eat the food that's been given to you. We all know that meaning, right? Well, I want to tell you about a couple who went out to eat at a fancy restaurant. When the food arrives, the husband says, "Wow, that looks great. Let's dig in." And without another word, he started to eat his food, while his wife glared at him disapprovingly. Well, at home, you always say grace. Why didn't you say it here? He said, "Honey, that's at home. Here, the cook actually knows how to cook." Then there's the story of the priest and the tiger. A priest visits the zoo. He trips and accidentally lands in the tiger pen. The tiger starts stalking him, coming over very, very slowly. So the priest starts to pray. To his surprise, the tiger starts to pray too. "It's a miracle," exclaims the priest. "I thought you were going to eat me." "Oh, shut up, you idiot," says the tiger. "I'm saying grace." So, that's one way of thinking of grace, a prayer. And if you don't have this custom in your house now, I came across some grace prayers that I want to suggest you consider on the internet. I came across them. The first one was, "Rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub." The second one was, "Thank you for teaching me gratitude for this delicious bread and meat. Thank you for teaching me patience while I have to wait until it's time to eat. Thank you for teaching me faith, expecting the food and never having doubts. And thank you for teaching me suffering by providing these Brussels sprouts." Another definition, common definition of grace, is what in many Christian faiths is called the grace of God. So I want to tell you a story about God's grace. A man dies, and he finds himself at the pearly gates. He rings the bell. St. Peter comes out, and St. Peter says to him, "I'm going to tell you how this works. You got to have 100 points to get in. You're going to tell me what you've done good in your life, and I'm going to keep score. If you get to 100, you get to get in." The man says, "Okay, well, I stayed married to the same woman for 50 years, and I never cheated on her, not even in my heart." St. Peter says, "Wow, that's amazing. 3 points." He says, "What else? What else did you do?" He said, "Well, I attended my church my entire life. I tithed. I gave 10% of my income. I served on committees. I served on the board." St. Peter is impressed. He says, "Okay, that's amazing. 1 point." The man is starting to get a little nervous, and he says, "Okay, how about this? I started a soup kitchen, and I have fed the homeless veterans for 30 years. St. Peter says, "Wow, that's amazing. You're amazing." And that's 6 points. The man just shakes his head. He said, "I'm never going to make it into heaven at this rate. The only way I'm going to get in is by the grace of God." And St. Peter said, "Come on in. 100 points. You got it." The grace of God is what gets us to a better place in life, or to heaven after death. So, this type of grace is kind of a forgiveness from God for when we sin. Now, I want to talk about the word sin a little bit, because we don't usually use that here in Unitarian Universalism. In fact, I saw people flinch when I said, we're going to talk a little bit about sin. So, the definition of sin that makes the most sense to me is the archery term, hamartia. It's a Greek word that means a bad shot or an error, and it can also be translated into sin. So that means sin is a bad shot, an error, where the archer misses the mark. He not only misses the bullseye, sometimes he misses the whole target. I have done that. So, in Christianity, the sinner is somebody who misses the mark, has made some kind of judgment error, and the grace of God forgives the sin. The grace of God unconditionally loves each one of us. And since we're all sinners, human beings, imperfect, then many Christian faiths believe that the grace of God is available for everyone, except those Westboro Baptist Church people. I was surprised to find out they only have about 40 people in their church, maybe up to 45 occasionally. And they believe that God only cares about them. If you don't belong to Westboro Baptist, you get none of God's grace. That's what they believe. What do you believe? I believe that grace is available all the time to everyone, to all of us. I don't know about God. That's a term that some people flinch at. But a higher energy, the great mystery of life, the coincidences that happen, I think they happen all the time if we are present in our life, really present, and look for them. Look for the graces. Grace is much bigger than a prayer. A little prayer you say before receiving a meal. Jackie Winsberg tells us, it's not just God forgiving you for missing the mark either. It's bigger than that. It's a way to live. It's a way you can choose to live your life. It's generosity. It's goodwill. It's noticing when someone is suffering and responding to it. When I asked my walking partner the other day what she thought grace was, she said, oh, many things. And I thought, that's the right answer. It is many things. It's giving someone a break. It's giving them more time. I might say to you, I'm going to give you 3-day grace period to pay the rest of your rent before we have to start eviction notices. Grace is giving that extra favor to a person, and I believe we get it from the universe as well. Grace is when somebody hurts you and you try to understand what is going on with them, what happened to them, and you try to understand and stand with them instead of hurting them back. It's having mercy. I read a story online about a 14-year-old boy who was caught stealing food at the grocery store. The owner of the store confronted him, and he said he was hungry, and his mama was hungry, and his 2 sisters were hungry. The owner of the store could have called the police, but instead he took mercy on the boy. He had grace. He gave him a bag of groceries, he drove him home and met his mother, and sure enough, they had nothing in the refrigerator. So then the owner gave the boy a job. For Christmas, the owner bought the boy a lawnmower and taught him how to get clients so that he could start earning money. This is grace. This is an example of grace. It's when you do a favor for someone, when you see a need and you step up to it and say, let me help. When you open a door and it changes a person's life, grace is when you do that for someone, and grace is when you let somebody do that for you. I know in my cancer adventure this year, I've had to learn to receive grace and presence and food from people that supported us during this hard time. Sometimes you might get fired from a job and you don't think of it as grace, but it's exactly what had to happen to help you get unstuck and go for what you really want in your life, what job you'd really like to do. Do you need more training? Go back to school. Do you need to network with people? Get out and get involved. So sometimes it doesn't always look like grace, but it is. Grace is seeing a homeless person lying on a bench and sleeping and going back to your car and getting the extra jacket that you have and going and putting it over him. This is grace. Grace is love. Grace is humility. Mother Teresa taught us, let us touch the dying, the poor, the lonely, and the unwanted according to the graces we have received. And let us not be ashamed or slow to do humble work. Show up. Mother Teresa also taught us, as Jackie Winsburn said, grace is a way to live. She modeled that for us. She was graceful in everything she did. So I think there are 3 places that we need to express grace. And the first one is for ourselves, that we have to have grace and kindness toward ourselves. It's time to stop beating yourself up if you get it wrong, if you make a mistake, if you forgot to do something. And give yourself grace. Okay, I was distracted. Okay, this happened, whatever. But giving yourself a break. Secondly, we need grace in our relationships. Like when our partners screw up, I don't know about you, my partner has never screwed up, so I'm still waiting. And or our kids screw up, or they forget and they give you their word, they're going to show up for this, and then they don't show up. It's giving grace, loving each other. Remember, too, that grace is something that can't be earned. It's something that is given, and freely accepted from the universe or life. The third place I think we need to give grace is with total strangers, people we meet at the library, people we meet at the grocery store, to be kind and open with our hearts, whether they are lovely people or whether they are wretches. Have you ever met a wretch? Have you ever been a wretch? I have. And that's why I love that song, Amazing Grace, to love a wretch like me. Wow. Thank you. Grace teaches us not just to love the lovely people, not just to love the easy people, but to love. That's what we're charged to do on this planet, to love even the wretches. So I want to tell you a story. I was inspired by the story I read, Amazing Grace, about stories. It's about a young boy that doesn't deserve grace, but he still gets it nonetheless. The story comes from inspirationalarchive.com, and it's written by author unknown. The boy stood with his back arched and his hands clenched defiantly. Go ahead, give it to me. The principal looked down at this young rebel. How many times have you been here? The child sneered and said, well, apparently not enough. The principal gave the boy a strange look. And you've been punished each time you've come, right? Yeah, I've been punished, if that's what you want to call it. He threw out his small chest. Go ahead, I can take whatever you dish out. I always have. And the principal said, and no thought of the punishment enters your head the next time when you're about to break a rule? Nope, I do whatever I want. Ain't nothing you people can do to stop me either. The principal looked over at the teacher who stood nearby. What did he do this time? Fighting. He took little Tommy and shoved his face into the sandbox. The principal turned to look at the boy. Why? Why did you do this to little Tommy? What did he do to you? Nothing. I don't like the way he was looking at me. And you know what? I don't like the way you're looking at me. And if I thought I could do it, I'd shove your face into something too. The teacher stiffened and started to rise, but a quick look from the principal stopped him. He contemplated the child for a moment and then quietly said to him, today, my young student, is the day you learn about grace. Grace? Isn't that what old people do before they sit down to eat? I don't need any of your stinking grace. Oh, but you do, the principal said. The principal studied the young man's face and whispered, oh yes, you truly do. The boy continued to glare at the principal, who said, grace, in its short definition, is unmerited favor. You cannot earn it. It is a gift, and it is always freely given. It means that you will not be getting what you so richly deserve today. The boy looked puzzled. You're not going to whip me? You're just going to let me walk? The principal looked down at the unyielding child. Yes, I'm going to let you walk. The boy was confused and studied the principal's face. No punishment at all, even though I socked Tommy and I shoved his face into the sandbox? The principal said, "Oh, there will be punishment. What you did was wrong, and there are always consequences to our actions. There will be punishment. Grace is not an excuse for doing wrong." "Oh, I knew it," sneered the boy, and he held out his hands. "Let's get on with it." The principal nodded toward the teacher. He carefully he said to the teacher, "Bring me the belt." The teacher presented the belt to the principal. He carefully folded it in two and then handed it back to the teacher. He looked at the child and said, "I want you to count the blows out loud." He slid out from behind his desk and he walked over and stood directly in front of the young man. He gently reached out and folded the child's hands back, his expectant hands. And then he turned to face the teacher with his own hands outstretched, and he said, "Begin." The belt whipped down on his outstretched hands. Crack! The young man jumped 10 feet in the air. He was shocked. Shock was on his face. "1," he whispered. "Crack!" 2. His voice raised an octave. "Crack!" 3. He couldn't believe this. Crack! 4. Big tears welled up in his eyes. "Okay, stop. That's enough. Stop!" Crack! Came the belt down on the principal's hands. Crack! The child flinched with each blow, tears beginning to stream down his face. Crack! Crack! "No, please!" he begged. "Stop it! I did it! I'm the one who deserves it! Stop! Please stop!" Still the blows came. Crack! Crack! One after another. Finally it was over. The principal stood with sweat glistening across his forehead and beads trickling down his face. Slowly he knelt. He studied the young man for a second, and then his swollen hands reached up to cradle the young boy's face, and he said one word, "Grace." That is what, to me, outrageous grace is. Large amounts of grace to give to somebody exactly what they need, even if it's hard for you. I want to end with one more story to help you understand what grace is. I'm giving stories today because I think you'll remember them, and I hope that that helps you remember to be generous with your grace to everyone you meet. Remember, too, it cannot be earned. It must be freely given. You don't give it as a reward. Remember, too, that it's all around us. If you look around, if you go to the park and you watch a mom interacting with her child, if you go and walk in the mall and you see people giving up their seat for somebody else to sit in, it's all grace. It's all grace. Remember, grace is a way of living. So this next story is a wow story, capital letters, W-O-W, and it comes from the wowzone.com. Again, the author is unknown. It's written or told by a dad. "I never dreamed that taking a child to Disney World could be so difficult, or that such a trip could teach me so much about life's grace. Our middle daughter had been previously adopted by another family. I'm sure this couple had the best of intentions, but they never quite integrated their adopted child into the family as much as the biological children. After a couple of rough years, they dissolved the adoption, and we ended up welcoming an 8-year-old girl into our house. For one reason or another, whenever our daughter's previous family vacationed at Disney World, they took their biological children, but they left their adopted daughter at home. Usually, at least in her understanding, this happened because she had done something wrong that precluded her presence on the trip. And so the time we adopted our daughter, she had seen many pictures of Disney World and heard many stories about the rides and the characters and the parades, But when it came to passing through those magic gates, she was left on the outside. Once I found out about this history, I made plans to take her to Disney World the next time I was speaking close to there. I thought I had mastered the Disney World drill. I knew from previous experiences that the prospect of seeing cast members in those freakishly oversized mouse and duck costumes somehow turned children into squirming bubbles of emotional instability. What I didn't expect was that the prospect of visiting this dream world would produce a stream of downright devilish behavior in our newest daughter. In the month leading up to the trip to the Magic Kingdom, she stole food when a simple request would have given her a snack. She lied when it would be just as easy to tell the truth. And she whispered insults that she had carefully crafted into her older sister's ear to hurt her as deep as possible. As the days on the calendar moved closer to the trip, her mutinies multiplied. A couple of days before our family headed to Florida, I pulled our daughter into my lap to talk to her about her latest escapade. "I know what you're doing," she said flatly. "You're not going to take me to Disney, are you?" The thought actually never crossed my mind, but her downward spiral suddenly started to make more sense. She knew she couldn't earn her way to Disney. She had tried that several times. So she was living in a way that would safely place her as far away as possible from the kingdom, the most magical place on earth. In retrospect, I'm embarrassed to admit, in that moment, I was tempted to turn her fear into my own advantage. The easiest response would have been, "Well, if you don't start behaving better, we're not going to take you." But by God's grace, I did not say that out loud. Instead, I asked her, "Is this trip something we're doing as a family?" And she nodded. He said, "Are you part of this family?" And she nodded, her face tearful and tears starting to run down her cheeks. Her father said, "Then you're going with us. Sure, there may be some consequences to help you remember what's right and what's wrong, but you're part of our family, and we are not leaving you behind." I'd like to say that her behavior grew better after that moment. They didn't. They got worse. Her choices pretty much spiraled out of control at every hotel and rest stop all the way to Disney. Still, we headed to Disney World on the day we had promised, and it was a typical Disney day. Overpriced tickets, overpriced food, lots of lines, mingled with just enough manufactured magic to make you maybe want to come back again there again. In our hotel room that evening, a very different child emerged. She was pensive, exhausted, and a little bit weepy, but her month-long facade of being a rebel had faded. When bedtime rolled around, I prayed with her, held her, and asked her, "So how was your first day of Disney World?" She closed her eyes and snuggled down with her stuffed unicorn. After a few moments, she opened her eyes ever so slightly. "Daddy," she said, "I finally got to go to Disney World, but it wasn't because I was good. It's because I'm yours." It wasn't because I was good. It's because I'm yours. I'm loved by you. I want to tell you, you belong to life. You are loved unconditionally, just for being here on the planet. No less than the trees and the stars, you have a right to be here. And that's the message of grace, outrageous grace, that you belong to life. You are sacred and magnificent. Remember, you can't earn it. It has to be given. Don't make other people earn it either. Open your heart and freely give grace to all that need it, which is all of us. May it be so. Blessed be and amen. As you go forth this week, remember to open your heart with grace and to live grace. To have that as a new way of being for yourself on the planet. Blessed be and amen.